Have you ever imagined what might happen if a wealthy rancher known for his unyielding courage took one look at a mysterious stranger and claimed her as his wife, no questions asked? Well, that's exactly the heart-stopping moment that kicks off this tale. Our fearless cowboy steps in and changes one woman's life forever. But that's only the beginning. Shadows from her past soon catch up, leading to intense standoffs, shocking secrets revealed, and high-stakes confrontations under the open skies. Want to know how it all unfolds and whether love and determination can truly overcome danger and betrayal? You've come to the right place. Press that subscribe button now so you won't miss a single twist or turn, and stay tuned to find out how one woman, a haunted past, and a legendary rancher forge a new destiny together. Get comfy, because this is a story you won't soon forget. Cora Albright arrived in the frontier town of Sagebrush Bend like a figure molded from dust and desperation. It was early morning when she stepped off the rickety stagecoach, her worn leather boots stirring up clouds of dirt as she moved. Townsfolk glanced her way, but no one offered more than a wary nod. She bore no luggage other than a tattered satchel, hugged tightly to her side, and she drifted to the saloon's rear entrance, slipping past half-lidded eyes that judged her unspoken story. The stable behind the saloon gave her a place to sleep, at least for the night. She recognized the uneasy glances of workers as they cleared hay bales and tended horses, all quietly aware of a stranger in their midst, who spoke seldom, if at all. For the first few days, Cora learned to remain unseen. She would gather leftover bread from the saloon's cookhouse, after hours slipping through alleyways when midday heat drove others inside. Occasionally, kind souls would drop a scrap or two near her makeshift bed, but always in silence, as if acknowledging her would invite trouble. People in Sagebrush Bend were not cruel. They simply safeguarded their own. A woman alone often meant calamity, knocking at the door. None of them, however, could have foreseen the moment Cassian Wilder strode into town. Cassian Wilder was the kind of man people recognized from a distance, tall, with a confident gait, honed by years on horseback. Anyone on Sagebrush Bend's main street could pick him out by the cut of his long riding coat, dusty at the edges, but made of better fabric than most ranchers afforded. Word had it he owned a vast spread of land, an hour's ride north. The Wilder Range, a place so large you could ride from dawn until dusk and barely see all of it. Folks in town said Cassian had once lived in the city, but fate and ambition brought him here, where the open land offered limitless possibilities and a man's name carried the weight of his honor. The morning Cassian arrived, he dismounted in front of the mercantile with an easy grace. By chance or providence, he spotted Cora at the end of the street, possibly glimpsing the exhaustion in her posture, the haunted look in her eyes. No one knew what compelled him to act. But before day's end, he made a bold announcement in full view of anyone who cared to listen. Standing on the sagging porch of the local judge's makeshift office, he declared his intention to marry her that very day, despite not knowing her name or story. In a town where marriages were rarely front-page news, the brazenness of Cassian Wilder's claim stunned everyone into silence. Some whispered that Cora must have bewitched him. Others speculated Cassian was simply lonely and wanted a helper for the Wilder Range. Yet the man's eyes, so calm and steady, told a different tale. His gaze seemed to say he recognized something in Cora, a quality no one else could see. She was a shadow gliding on the fringes, carrying more scars than belongings. Cassian's voice offered her a choice: remain in the uncertain oblivion that had marked her life, or step into the paradoxical safety of a stranger's home. Against every instinct that had kept her alive, Cora said yes. That single word set in motion a series of events that would test both their hearts and their resolve in ways neither could have predicted. Married life began not with bridal lace and church bells, but with a hasty signature on a certificate in the cramped front office of Judge Harrington. He was an aging man who puffed cigars one after another, his rheumy eyes flicking between Cassian and Cora with equal parts bemusement and suspicion. The judge asked for a name, hers, so he could finalize the paperwork. When her gaze dropped to the dusty floor, it was Cassian who spoke up. "Let her take my name," he said. "Cora Wilder." And just like that, she was someone new, her old identity buried beneath fresh ink. They left the courthouse with the sun burning overhead. The stares of the townspeople pressed in from every side, their curiosity and disapproval heavy in the air. Cora was used to people looking at her, but Cassian's protective presence was unfamiliar. He escorted her to his waiting buckboard wagon, his calloused hand gently guiding her elbow. Sagebrush Ben watched in rapt astonishment as a woman with no past and a man with a legendary ranch rode off together, forging a marriage with more questions than answers. The Wilder Range surprised Cora at first sight. She'd expected a patch of desert with a small shack, but what lay before her was a sprawling domain edged by distant foothills that rippled like waves of emerald and gold. A creek shimmered along the eastern boundary, and beyond that stood sturdy corrals, a large barn and workers' bunkhouses. Dominating the center was a two-story home built of polished timber and stacked stone. A simple sign hung above the broad porch. Wilder Range Cassian introduced Cora to the ranch hands in a matter-of-fact manner. "Glenn May's my foreman," he said as an older man with thick, salt-and-pepper hair tipped his hat. Then came brothers Will and James Howell, younger men with matching grins, and Finn Parker Mons, ranch's horse trainer barely out of boyhood with a warm, eager smile. They all nodded politely, though Cora sensed their curiosity simmering just beneath the surface. Inside the house, Cassian showed her the kitchen with its ample counters, open shelves laden with crockery, and a wood-burning stove that gleamed from meticulous care. "We had a housekeeper years ago," he explained. "But since my wife passed, things have been left as they are." The mention of his late wife explained the hush she felt in certain corners, a sense of memory preserved. He brought her upstairs, leading her to a spacious bedroom at the end of the hall. "You'll have your own room," Cassian said quietly. "Mine is across the hall. I'm not seeking obligations. Just a partner, someone who can find comfort here." He then gestured to a trunk near the window. "Helen's clothing is inside my wife's. You might find something that fits if you need that name." Helen hung in the air. For a moment, Cora felt the weight of someone else's story pressing in on her own. She murmured a word of thanks, uncertain how to navigate these intimate remnants of a woman she never knew. Standing by the window, she looked out at the ranch yard below. Men leading horses, the barn doors swung wide, the fading sun gilding every surface. She realized this place, with its wide-open sky and quiet sense of order, might be the closest thing to peace she had known in a very long time. The days that followed introduced Cora to a rhythm she had almost forgotten. Waking to the sound of roosters crowing and men's voices in the yard, she found solace in small routines. She baked bread in the ranch kitchen each morning, her first hesitant attempts turning out dense but edible. With time, the bread grew lighter, and the men at the breakfast table offered respectful nods to show they appreciated her efforts. Cassian, for his part, integrated Cora into the ranch's workings at a measured pace. He had a knack for reading people, and she suspected he realized that trust didn't come easily to her. He showed her the ledgers one evening, explaining costs and incomes, feed prices, cattle sales, wages for the hands. "Keeping track helps me sleep better," he admitted, tapping a column of neat figures. "People think the open range is all freedom, but it comes with responsibilities you can't ignore." Outside in the corrals, Finn displayed the ranch's prize horses. It was there that Cora first encountered a wounded mare named Harmony. The mare had a long, ragged scar on her flank and shied away from any human approach. Finn apologized for her state, saying, "She got tangled in barbed wire, then spooked so bad she's never been the same around men." Cora, however, saw a familiar fear in the horse's eyes, and she approached with careful steps, humming a half-remembered lullaby. Harmony flicked, her ears tense at first but stayed put. After a few days, Cora could brush her coat gently, the horse letting out soft snorts of relief. Meanwhile, certain corners of Sagebrush Bend continued to gossip. Whispers circulated about the silent woman Cassian Wilder had brought home as his bride. Many women in town clucked their tongues, speculating on her origins. Beatrice, the no-nonsense proprietress of the local saloon, told anyone who would listen that Cassian had the right to marry whomever he wanted, but she too was curious about Cora's secrets. A turning point arrived when Cora ventured to the general store alone to replenish supplies. The store owner, Mr. Marlowe, treated her civilly, but his wife gave her a tight-lipped smile, the kind offered to a stranger whose past was suspect. Sheriff Holden happened to be in the store checking on a shipment of ammunition for the town's small jail. The sheriff eyed Cora with mild concern. "Mrs. Wilder, is it?" he asked. She nodded. "Well, just know, Cassian's a good man, but we watch out for our own around here." The implication was clear. If Cora brought trouble, the town would respond. It was that same trip when a piece of mail at the post office changed her life again. A telegram addressed to the wife of Matthew Carlyle. She nearly froze at the sight of the sender's name. Mary, her old housekeeper from that previous life. Her heart hammered in her chest as she left the store in a daze. Matthew Carlyle was still searching for her, it seemed, and Mary's telegram could only mean one thing. Time was running short before the shadows of the past reached Sagebrush Bend. Back at the ranch, Cora confronted her biggest decision since she'd signed her name on that hasty marriage certificate. Should she tell Cassian the truth about who she was, or rather who she had been? She returned to find him in the barn repairing a loose board on one of the stalls. He greeted her with a smile that wavered the moment he saw her anxious face. She took a breath and led him to a quiet corner by Harmony's stall. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the telegram, unfolding it to reveal Mary's warning. Matthew Carlisle had been seen in a nearby city asking pointed questions, threatening anyone who seemed unwilling to help Cassian read it, with a face gone still as stone. Cora, he began softly, tell me what you were running from. For a time, she couldn't speak. Silence was safer, but Cassian's eyes were unhurried, giving her space. At last she confided in him, the words spilling out like a long block stream. She told him that Matthew Carlisle was not merely a jealous man, but a powerful figure who possessed control over rail lines, shipping routes, and political allies. She recounted how at first she'd believed him to be charming and well-connected, a dashing suitor with all the qualities a young woman might admire. But once married, his charm faded, replaced by a calculating cruelty that left her bruised in spirit and body. She told Cassian about nights when Matthew would rage over lost business deals and lash out at her, then the mornings when he'd put on a smooth veneer for his society connections. As his trophy wife Cora had been a silent fixture at lavish galas wearing dresses she secretly detested because they only served to showcase Matthew's wealth. He never let her forget she was under his thumb, but the final blow came when she realized that beyond his personal violence, Matthew Carlisle was deeply involved in crimes that ranged from corruption to outright murder. When she found ledgers detailing his transactions, bribes, and strong-arm tactics, she hid them away, knowing they were her only leverage. With the help of Mary, she set her plan in motion. A staged fire in the Carlisle estate convinced everyone, including Matthew, that she had perished in the flames. In reality, she slipped away under the cover of night. Cassian listened without interruption, though his jaw worked angrily as she described Matthew's brutality. He asked to see the ledgers she had saved, proof of the vile dealings that could put Matthew behind bars. Hesitating, Cora finally admitted the documents were hidden in her battered satchel, in a secret compartment she'd sewn herself. I knew if I ever faced him again, it might be my only defense, she whispered. To her surprise, Cassian neither chided her for bringing such danger to his doorstep, nor balked at the enormity of the threat. Instead, he touched her hand. You're not alone anymore, he said firmly. We'll figure out how to stop him. His quiet resolve brought tears to Cora's eyes. For once, she didn't have to fight her battles on her own. But as she rested her cheek against his broad shoulder, she couldn't shake the feeling that Matthew would stop at nothing to reclaim what he saw as rightfully his. In the days that followed, a tense undercurrent settled over the Wilder Range. Each morning, Cassian did his usual rounds inspecting fences and herds, but now he kept a rifle strapped to his saddle at all times. Glenville James and Finn sensed trouble in the air. Though Cassian explained only that there was a looming threat to the ranch, they were no fools. They saw Cora's worry, the changes in Cassian's manner. All remained loyal to him, quietly fortifying the ranch's perimeter. Sheriff Holden soon appeared at the ranch with an ominous letter pinned to the saddle of his horse. The page bore an anonymous note threatening to reveal the scandal behind Cora Albright's disappearance, if Cassian Wilder did not hand her over. There was also mention of the ranch's water rights, fueling rumors that a local magnate named Clayton Farrow was working with Matthew Carlisle to pressure Cassian into surrendering everything he held dear. The threat was more than personal. It was aimed at the Wilder Range's lifeblood. Cora felt torn between the guilt of bringing danger and the fierce conviction that she would not run again. She and Cassian sat in his study late one evening, the flames in the hearth dancing over the rough-hewn walls. She laid out the stolen ledgers, meticulously copied documents detailing Matthew's darkest dealings. Cassian combed through them, scowling at each damning entry. He's bribed lawmen, Cassian remarked, pointing to the names of men who once represented the territory's justice. It won't be easy to find someone uncorrupted to take this too. Quietly, she told him about an honest federal marshal. She had once heard Mary mention a man rumored to be beyond Carlisle's influence. If they could get these documents to him, it might be enough to bring Matthew down. But it would require an overt act, one that would signal to Matthew exactly where Cora was hiding. Cassian's hand found hers atop the desk, his grip steady as he looked her in the eye. We can't keep him guessing forever. If we do nothing, we let him gather more allies. He flipped the ledger pages closed. We'll go to Sheriff Holden tomorrow, see if he can help us make contact with that federal marshal. That night, Cora hardly slept. She kept imagining the day Matthew Carlyle would ride into Sagebrush Bend, arrogance radiating from every step of his polished boots demanding her return. She recalled him snapping his fingers at servers during fancy dinners, the way he'd scold her over the slightest perceived misstep. Her breath quickened at the memory, but a glance at Cassian's sturdy silhouette against the faint moonlight in the hallway helped dispel the panic. The memory no longer held total power over her. By dawn, the ranch stirred with anxious energy. Will and James tested the newly reinforced fences. Finn took extra time with the horses, ensuring their readiness or for a possible confrontation. Glenn rode out to speak with neighbors, mustering quiet support. Meanwhile, Cassian and Cora prepared for a ride into town, documents hidden securely in her satchel. Before they departed, Cassian went to the barn's storeroom and returned with a small revolver. Offering it to Cora, he said, Helen believed every woman should learn to protect herself. He pressed the firearm into her hands gently. I know you're capable, but I want you to have something that tips the odds in your favor. Cora nodded, her stomach tightening at the notion of violence, but she couldn't deny the trembling surge of empowerment in her veins. She holstered the weapon discreetly beneath her shawl, inhaled the brisk morning air, and mounted her horse beside Cassian. Together they headed to Sagebrush Bend, where decisions would be made that could alter both their destinies forever. The town looked eerily calm compared to the turmoil in Cora's mind. Dust swirled in the chilly autumn wind, and storekeepers prepared for the day's commerce. By sweeping porches or setting out displays, Cassian guided her to Sheriff Holden's office, a modest single-room structure near the center of Sagebrush Bend. A threadbare flag fluttered from a pole out front. Inside, Holden greeted them with pursed lips, removing his hat in deference to Cora. He wasn't an unkind man, but the presence of a serious threat looming over his town set caution lines across his weathered face. I've been hearing rumors, he said, waving them toward two wooden chairs by his desk. Rumors of Clayton Farrow meeting with a stranger, someone from the Eastern Territories. He looked pointedly at Cora. She pulled the ledgers from her satchel, placing them on the sheriff's desk. This is proof, she explained, forcing her voice not to waver. Matthew Carlyle has used threats, bribery, and worse to maintain his empire. He's cunning and he's ruthless. I can't let him or Farrow claim the Wilder Range as part of their schemes. Holden leaned forward, leafing through a few pages. He let out a low whistle as he recognized names of judges, businessmen, and others Carlyle had seemingly bought. Cassian added, we need to get these to a federal marshal, one we can trust to bring Carlyle to justice without tipping him off. After a moment's deliberation, Holden nodded slowly. There's a man named Anders who rides circuit through these parts. He's known to be incorruptible, a rare quality. If you can rendezvous with him, he'll take these documents as evidence. I'll wire him to meet me in Redwood Fork about 2 days' ride east. The plan settled. Cora exhaled, feeling both relief and dread. They would soon be exposing themselves, alerting Carlyle exactly where she was. But the alternative, waiting until he struck first, felt unbearable. They rose to leave, but Holden stopped them, his gaze flickering to Cora. You sure you're ready to face him? She hesitated. A swirl of old fears threatened to choke her. Yet the memory of Cassian's unwavering promise in that barn gave her strength. If it's the only way to keep the Wilder Range safe and end his reign. I'm ready. They left the office, stepping onto the wooden sidewalk outside. The moment they emerged, Cora noticed a pair of eyes watching them from across the street. A slick-haired man in an expensive-looking coat leaned against the post of the hotel veranda, a smirk curling the edges of his lips. Cassian stiffened beside his Farrow, he murmured under his breath, nodding subtly in the man's direction. Clayton Farrow didn't move. He only tilted his head with a mocking nod of greeting. In that instant, Cora felt the weight of everything her presence in Cassian's life had brought him. The force of Farrow's silent challenge was palpable. We know who you are. We know what you're trying to do, saying nothing. Cassian led Cora back to their horses. They mounted and rode out of town, each keenly aware that the next steps were carved out in bold letters. They had documents that could ruin Matthew Carlyle. Farrow and Carlyle both had the resources to strike before those documents reached the marshal. Cora's cheeks burned with a sudden flush of anger. No longer just fear. She was done being a pawn in other men's games. If Matthew wanted to find her, then so be it. She wasn't the same woman he had pushed around and terrorized. She had chosen a new name and a new destiny, and she was prepared to defend it. At dawn the following day, Cassian, Glenn, and Finn rode east with the documents, aiming to intercept Marshal Anders At Redwood Fork, the rest of the ranch hands, Will and James, remained behind with Cora to guard the wilder range against any immediate attack. Cora kept busy throughout the morning, organizing supplies, tidying the rooms, and double-checking the condition of the barn. But tension buzzed in the air. By midday, the men stationed around the perimeter reported seeing a small group of riders approaching. From the upstairs window, Cora peered out to see three strangers reining in at the ranch's edge. The men radiated menace in the way they held their horses and scanned the landscape. Will and James armed themselves, stepping onto the broad porch to confront the newcomers. An older man among them spoke first, tipping his hat with feigned politeness. "We're just travelers passing through," he said. "Looking for someone named Cora Albright. Heard she might be out here on the wilder range." His grin was taut, revealing no warmth. Will Howell, tall and broad-shouldered, responded evenly. "There's no Cora Albright here, friend. This is the wilder range." He rested his hand on the rifle at his hip for emphasis. Cora watched the exchange from inside, pulse hammering. She caught a glimpse of one rider's expression, hungry, eager to provoke. This had Carlisle's fingerprints all over it, even if the man himself wasn't present. She thought of going out to stand with Will and James to declare her new name and show she wouldn't hide. But an intuition told her to hold back, to let them handle the threat carefully. Outside, the older man shrugged. "Well, now, that's interesting, because word in Sagebrush Bend says Cassian Wilder brought home a bride with no clear past. Could be we got some confusion about her name." James's voice was calm but firm. "We have no quarrel with you, but if you're here looking to start one, you'll find it." The rider exchanged a silent look with his companions, who shifted in their saddles. One reached for his gun, but James cocked his rifle smoothly. The standoff froze in tense silence until the older man scowled. "Let's go," he growled to his men. "We'll find her soon enough." They turned and galloped off, dust swirling in their wake. Will and James watched them go, rifles ready, should the men decide to double back. Finally, they relaxed, muttering curses under their breath. Cora, trembling with adrenaline, descended the stairs and stepped out onto the porch. "Thank you," she managed, her voice tight with emotion. "I should have," Ma'am Will interrupted gently. "Cassian put us in charge of the ranch while he's gone. That includes your safety. You don't need to stand out here to prove anything." James nodded in agreement. "We've got watch shifts arranged around the clock. Don't you worry." Somehow their confidence steadied her own nerves. She could do little but wait, trusting Cassian would reach the marshal before Matthew's men forced a more direct confrontation. That evening, Cora found she couldn't eat much. Anxiety coursed through her veins like a slow poison. She wandered out to the paddock to see Harmony, the wounded mare she had befriended. Harmony's ears perked up at Cora's approach, and she pressed her nose into Cora's hands, seeking solace. It reminded Cora that she wasn't the only creature on this ranch who understood what it was like to live with fear. Cradling the mare's head, Cora whispered softly, "I won't let them take this from me." She realized she was speaking as much to herself as to the horse. Harmony's gentle acceptance helped seal the resolve in Cora's heart. She would stand by Cassian's side no matter what battles lay ahead. Cassian returned at dusk on the second day, accompanied by Glenn and Finn, all looking grim and tired but resolute. They dismounted in a flurry of dust and shed their riding gloves. Cora was at the barn door the moment they arrived, her hands twisting in her apron from nervous tension. "Did you find Marshal Anders?" she asked breathlessly. Cassian nodded, eyes flicking across her face to reassure himself she was safe. "We did. The documents are in his possession now, and he promised to begin immediate proceedings. If Carlisle shows his face in these parts, he'll be treated as a wanted criminal." A collective sigh of relief passed among the ranch hands, who'd gathered to greet them. They secured the horses, carrying the saddles inside, but the relief was short-lived. Glenn mentioned that on their ride back, they spotted Clayton Farrow's men loitering near the entry to Sagebrush Bend, as if waiting for instructions. "They're not making a secret of it," Glenn warned. "They're armed and ready for trouble." Cassian's jaw tightened. "So we don't let them bring that trouble here?" He instructed Glenn to have Will and James patrol around the edges of the property. Finn would remain on call in case any horses needed to be readied at a moment's notice. Then Cassian turned to Cora. "Come with me," he said gently, guiding her into the quiet of the ranch house. They settled in the parlor, a warm room with a stone fireplace and well-worn furniture. Helen's presence lingered in the tastefully arranged quilts and the pressed wild flowers framed on one wall. Cassian sat beside Cora, took her hands in his, and looked at her with an intensity that set her pulse humming. "It might be tomorrow or next week," he said quietly, "but eventually Carlisle will show up himself. If he's as controlling as you say, He'll want to make an example. He'll want everyone to see how he drags you back under his thumb. Cora bit her lip, the memory of Matthew's twisted pride igniting her anger. I'm not going anywhere with him. Never again. Cassian's grip tightened. No, you won't. But I can't promise it'll be easy. When he does come, he'll have no compunction about hurting innocent bystanders to get what he wants. I'm not letting him near you, and I'm certainly not letting him destroy the Wilder Range. Silence stretched between them, laden with unspoken fears. Finally, Cora spoke. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a place to belong, for believing I'm worth defending. I never thought I'd find that again. Cassian's eyes softened, and his voice dropped low. You're worth more than I can say, worth far more than a ranch or anything I own. I wish I'd met you without all this turmoil chasing at your heels, but I'll take you any way I can. She leaned forward, letting her forehead rest against his. The warmth of the fire seemed to surround them, a protective cocoon against the gathering storm. Outside, the men took up their posts, rifles readied for the inevitable confrontation. In that moment, despite the tension, Cora felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine hope. It fueled her determination. For too long, she had let the memory of Matthew's cruelty dictate her every move. Tonight, her newly chosen name, Cora Wilder, felt as solid as the very ground Cassian had built his life upon. Come morning, they would brace themselves for whatever battle arrived at their gates. And if Matthew Carlyle intended to tear her world apart again, he would discover just how formidable a woman could be when she refused to be another man's possession. The next dawn ushered in a gray sky clouds thick with the promise of rain. Word reached the Wilder Range that Clayton Farrow had ridden into Sagebrush Bend, accompanied by none other than Matthew Carlyle, who was still wearing the marks of his high status in his tailored coat and polished boots. The entire town braced for confrontation. From her vantage on the porch, Cora watched Cassian speak in low tones with Glenn and Finn. They had a plan. If Carlyle tried to make a spectacle in town, the men would split up, positioning themselves around the main street. Sheriff Holden had already cleared away curious onlookers, urging families to stay indoors. The tension was like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Cora insisted on riding along. Cassian, though protective, understood her resolve. I have to face him, she said simply, loading the small revolver Cassian had given her. If I hide, he'll only use that to claim I belong under his protection again. Reluctantly, Cassian agreed. Her eyes flashed with steeled determination when he said it was time to go. They rode into Sagebrush Bend just before midday, the horses' hooves echoing on the hard-packed road. The sky had grown darker, a low rumble of thunder hinting at an approaching storm. Sure enough, Carlyle was already waiting at the opposite end of the street, flanked by two professional-looking hired guns. Farrow stood off to the side, a faint smirk on his face as if relishing the drama. Carlyle dismounted gracefully, scanning the scene. Then his gaze landed on Cora. A flicker of shock crossed his features, quickly replaced by a triumphant sneer. There you are, he called, his voice smooth but dripping with menace. Cora. Albright, I heard wild rumors you'd remarried. He paused, letting his eyes roam over her with undisguised contempt. I see you're settling for less as usual. Cassian tensed beside her, but Cora laid a hand on his arm. She dismounted, stepping onto the muddy street. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she steadied her breathing. I'm Cora Wilder now, she announced clearly, the wind pulling at her hair. You no longer have any hold over me. Carlyle gave a cold, hollow laugh. No hold. You forget we have a binding union, my dear. A legal document that states you're my property, so to speak. You ran away, but you can't run from the law. Sheriff Holden emerged from a side alley, rifle in hand. That's enough, Carlyle. We've seen your so-called marriage document, and we have evidence that it's a forgery. His expression was stern. You're wanted for crimes in multiple jurisdictions, and a federal marshal has your ledgers, courtesy of Cora. Something in Carlyle's smug composure cracked. A flash of fury contorted his features. Traitor, he snarled at Cora. You dare to double-cross me after everything I gave you. Cora's temper flared, overshadowing her lingering fear. You gave me bruises and scars, Carlyle. You gave me nightmares, and you are going to give this region extortion and brutality. I'm done accepting any of it. In that instant, Carlyle drew his pistol with frightening speed, aiming it straight at Cassian. Time slowed. Cora reacted, snapping her revolver up. Two shots sounded almost simultaneously. One bullet ripped through Carlyle's sleeve, causing him to stagger back. The other struck the ground near Cassian's feet, sending up a spray of dirt. Chaos erupted. Pharaoh's men tried to intervene, but Glenn and Finn were already there, rifles leveled, forcing them to drop their weapons. Cassian had steadied his aim on Carlyle, who clutched his wounded arm, blood staining the expensive fabric. "You fool," Carlyle spat, voice trembling with rage. "Do you have any idea who you're messing with? My name opens every door, hires every gun." "Not anymore," the sheriff cut in. "We have enough to send you away for a long stretch. Marshal Anders is waiting for you up in Redwood Fork." Carlyle attempted one last lunge in Cora's direction, but Cassian slammed him back with a firm punch. The air rushed from Carlyle's lungs as he crumpled to the muddy street, gasping. Rain began to fall in a soft patter, darkening his coat as he glared up at Cora, every bit of his old power disintegrating under the weight of her defiance. She stood over him, revolver still gripped in her hand. Her voice when she spoke carried the ring of finality. "You don't own me, you never did, and you sure as hell don't now." By the time Sheriff Holden clapped irons on Matthew Carlyle's wrists, the raindrops had grown heavier. Pharaoh's smirk was gone, replaced by sour disbelief. He too was escorted away under the suspicion of conspiracy. As the street cleared, Cora turned to Cassian, who stood as a bulwark at her side, unwavering. She realized that at last the truth had won out over every twisted lie that had governed her past. Cassian slipped an arm around her, the tension of the day loosening as the threat faded. She exhaled shakily, leaning against him. For the first time, she felt a genuine sense of freedom, not just from Carlyle, but from the old ghost that had chased her into the desert. The sky thundered once more, washing Sagebrush Bend in a cleansing downpour. She looked up at Cassian's face, each raindrop shining against his strong features, and understood something profound. She could finally live without fear. They made their way back to the Wilder Range, where the ranch hands and townspeople would soon gather in celebration. The storm's passing signaled more than just the end of a season. It was the dawn of a new era, one where Cora's name chosen freely would define her destiny. And in Cassian's steadfast love, she had found not ownership, but partnership. In that unity, she reclaimed her story, unbroken and unafraid. When I think back on Cassian Wilder's unwavering stance to protect Cora, despite not knowing her past, it's a powerful reminder that genuine kindness can exist in a harsh world. Through heartbreak, sacrifice, and plenty of courage, they each found the strength to break free from old fears and forge a new beginning. I truly believe this story shows how hope blossoms in the most unexpected places and how the bonds we choose can become stronger than any we're forced to accept. If you found yourself rooting for Cassian and Cora, or if this tale sparked a thought about loyalty, bravery, or second chances, I'd love to hear your opinions. Comment below and join the discussion on what their journey means to you. Remember to subscribe and stick around for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit.